Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the matriarchs, the women that we get to know in the book of Genesis. And we're talking about Rachel. We have two more women. One of them doesn't exactly fit our criteria, but we're going to study her anyway. But we're finishing up our study of Rachel today, and we're going to talk about Rachel's death. We mentioned last time that by the time Rachel and Leah and Jacob and their family had left their dad, had left Laban, left Padan Aram, that the daughters were already in their 40s or the 40-ish and kind of beyond childbearing age. After Jacob um, returns to Bethel, and the original sons are fully grown. We know how grown they are because we have the story of the rape of their sister Dinah and how Jacob and, excuse me, um, Simeon and Levi go into the town and um, and kill all the people um, of the town because of the rape of their sister. They're grown men. They're old enough to do that to avenge their sister's honor. Um, um, it's only after all this that Benjamin is born, and we read about Rachel's death. And so Rachel has to be, in her mid to late 40s, maybe 50 at this point, whenever she gives birth to her last son. But God determines when babies are born. And so she's going to give birth to one more son. They journeyed, I'm reading Genesis chapter 35. We're reading verses 16 through 21. They journeyed from Bethel, and when there was still some distance to Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered severe labor. And it came about when she was in severe labor that the midwife said to her, "Don't be afraid, because you're bearing another son." And it came about as her soul was departing, for she died, that she named him Ben-Oni, son of my sorrows. But his father called him Benjamin, son of my right hand, son of my strength. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her grave. The pillar, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave, to this day. Then Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent toward Eder. Now, if Genesis were written sometime in the early days of the nation of Israel being established, um, if the book of Genesis was written by Moses, maybe. These are called the books of Moses because he's the main character of the 5 books together, but maybe, and he dies, of course, at the end, but maybe he did write most of the. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it matters from the Holy Spirit. But if the books were written about that time, then they were written about 700 years after these events. 700 years. And the writer can still say, Rachel's pillar is there. Um, the children of Israel had been in enslavement for 4 centuries plus, and the pillar was still there when they came back. So they're journeying from Bethel, and they're journeying to Ephrath, and on the way, Rachel begins to give birth, and this is an at-risk pregnancy anyway, because of her age, and uh, they have a midwife, a family midwife, evidently, and and she says, "Don't be afraid. You're having another son." Um, was the baby being born breech that she could know this before he was fully delivered? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it, um, but we're told parenthetically that she died in childbirth. As her soul was departing her, for she died, that she named him Ben-Oni. these women are the ones who name the children. We've read that throughout their story, that when they have children, they name the children because they're the ones who have the real agency in their household, not their husband. But Rachel died, and he does not call this son Benoni, but Benjamin, Benjamin, son of my right hand, son of my strength. So Rachel died and was buried there in Bethlehem. She doesn't get to be buried alongside her husband in the grave at Machpelah, the cave there. We talked about that when we talked about Leah, how Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and and Jacob and Leah are there, as well as Joseph. So 3 pairs of patriarchs, and then Joseph are buried there in the cave at Machpelah. But Joseph's mother isn't there, not his birth mother anyway. She's buried in Bethlehem, and there was a pillar that was erected to her that lasted a millennia, evidently. Um, and um, and Bethlehem continues to be associated with Rachel. We have the prophecy in Micah about the death of the children when Herod will seek the death of baby Jesus. Rachel weeping for her children, and she can't be consoled. And it's interesting that there's a beautiful irony that Rachel has all these children when she was only given 2, but she has all these children and she's weeping for her children because they've been and it's associated with, although she's not in the lineage of Jesus, she has her own role to play in the story of Jesus and the birth of Jesus because of this prophecy. And so I think that's a beautiful irony as well. Anyway, that brings us to the end of Rachel's life. We have 2 more women to talk about. We'll spend a couple of sessions talking about Tamar, and then we'll talk a little bit about Asenath. So I think she's kind of remarkable too. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.